The pirate cheated the gallows when the executioner's rope snapped before a stunned crowd, convincing many that God had spared him. But moments later, the British Crown dragged him back beneath a second noose, hanged him without mercy, and left his body to rot for years inside an iron gibbet, so every sailor entering London would know that no pirate escaped justice forever. Enjoy the video, and don't forget to subscribe. Trace your finger along the map from the Thames estuary to the warm waters of the Caribbean, and picture the year 1722 as the smell of rotting oak, boiling pine tar, damp hemp rigging, stale bilge water, and sulfur from recently fired cannon drifts across a gray sea beneath low clouds. Imagine a pirate whose name spread from taverns in London to hidden anchorages near Nassau because he survived what almost no condemned sailor ever escaped. Long before the gallows awaited him, he had served aboard merchant vessels built from English oak with heavy futtocks locked beneath pronounced tumble-home, hulls measuring nearly 90 feet along the keel and displacing roughly 120 tons. Every voyage demanded endless maintenance, including careful careening, fresh oakum driven into open seams with caulking irons, and heated pine tar brushed across planking until the entire hull released a thick resinous odor. Like many desperate seamen of the early 18th century, declining wages, brutal discipline, and broken promises pushed him toward piracy, despite the growing campaign launched by the British Crown after the collapse of numerous letters of marque issued during earlier wars. Pirate crews replaced naval hierarchy with articles of agreement promising equal voting rights, fixed compensation for injury, and carefully divided shares of captured cargo. Yet every signature beneath those articles also brought the certainty that capture would almost certainly end beneath the hangman's rope. Even before his final voyage, every splinter in the deck, every groan of hemp shrouds stretched beneath Atlantic wind, and every bronze cannon cast from roughly 88% copper with nearly 10% tin reminded him that fortune at sea never lasted forever. The vessel carrying him toward his final crime was a fast pirate sloop, capable of outrunning many heavier warships because its shallow draft allowed dangerous navigation across shoals where larger frigates hesitated to follow, measuring approximately 75 feet along the keel and carrying between 8 and 12 carriage guns supported by swivel pieces mounted along reinforced bulwarks. The ship depended upon speed instead of overwhelming firepower. Every cannon required careful preparation before battle. Black powder composed of roughly 75% saltpeter, 15% charcoal, and 10% sulfur was measured into coarse linen cartridges before being rammed tightly behind solid iron, round shot, weighing between 4 and 6 pounds. At ignition, expanding gases generated tremendous pressure inside the polished bronze barrel, accelerating the projectile until it exploded through oak planking, tearing apart tightly packed wood fibers into razor-sharp splinters that often killed more sailors than the cannonball itself. The pirate learned every detail of this deadly routine, from sponging the hot bore after each discharge to preventing premature ignition caused by glowing embers trapped inside the chamber. Yet victory at sea depended upon more than artillery. Grappling hooks, boarding axes, cutlasses sharpened along sandstone wheels, and flintlock pistols loaded with oversized lead balls transformed every engagement into brutal hand-to-hand combat fought across blood-soaked decks, slick with seawater and shattered timber. For months, the crew captured merchant brigs carrying sugar, indigo, tobacco, and manufactured goods, believing each successful raid strengthened their reputation while secretly placing them ever closer to the inevitable attention of Royal Navy patrols and colonial governors determined to erase piracy from the Atlantic forever. Their confidence grew with every prize, but so did the number of witnesses who survived to describe their faces, their ship, and the captain who believed no court would ever place a rope around his neck. Months later, that confidence collapsed when a heavily armed Royal Navy detachment cornered the pirate vessel near a narrow coastal passage where shifting sandbanks restricted every possible escape. Unlike the lightly armed merchantmen the crew usually hunted, the pursuing warship mounted heavier bronze artillery, disciplined gun crews, and experienced officers trained to maintain coordinated broadsides despite rolling seas and dense powder smoke. The pirate sloop attempted desperate maneuvers, trimming canvas and adjusting braces to squeeze every possible knot from the wind. But damaged rigging, shredded topsails, and fractured yards steadily reduced its speed. Cannon fire smashed through the tumble home, shattered futtocks beneath the gun deck, and drove jagged oak splinters through men attempting to reload their weapons. Pumps struggled to remove the seawater pouring through fresh holes opened just above the waterline, while smoke mixed with tar vapor, burning hemp and blood until visibility almost disappeared. Boarding soon followed. Royal Marines carrying muskets with fixed bayonets crossed the tangled wreckage as pistols cracked at arm's length and cutlasses struck sparks from iron boarding pikes. Within minutes, the pirate crew was overwhelmed, chained together, and transported back across the Atlantic under heavy guard. During the long voyage to England, the prisoners watched gulls circle above gray water, while iron shackles rubbed their ankles raw, and every passing day brought them closer to the infamous execution dock on the River Thames. They already knew the ritual awaiting convicted pirates. Unlike ordinary criminals, they would be hanged at low tide, so their bodies could remain suspended until 3 tides had washed over them, serving as a warning to every sailor entering London's busy harbor. Few believed anyone could survive that punishment, yet fate had prepared something even stranger for one condemned man. On the morning of execution, the condemned pirate climbed the rough wooden cart beneath the towering gallows at Execution Dock, while thousands gathered along the muddy banks of the Thames. The hemp rope, nearly an inch thick, was placed around his neck as the hangman tightened the knot beneath his left ear. When the cart rolled away, the crowd expected another swift death. Instead, the rope suddenly snapped with a violent crack. The pirate crashed onto the wet ground, coughing and bleeding, but unmistakably alive. Gasps spread through the spectators, many believing divine intervention had spared him, while even the officials hesitated for a brief moment before deciding that the sentence had not yet been fulfilled. Ignoring the frightened whispers of the crowd, the authorities immediately prepared a second rope. The exhausted pirate, barely able to stand after the fall, was lifted back onto the scaffold with bruised ribs and blood running down his face. This time, the hemp held. The drop was short, causing slow strangulation rather than a broken neck. The punishment reserved for pirates whose crimes were meant to terrify every sailor entering London. Minutes later, his body hung motionless above the river. But even death did not end his punishment. An iron gibbet cage was forged around the corpse and suspended beside the Thames, where wind, rain, salt air, and scavenging birds slowly reduced the remains to a grim warning, visible for years. Travelers approaching London by water could see the blackened iron cage swaying above the shoreline long before reaching the busy docks. Passing captains ordered young sailors to look upon the remains and remember the price of piracy. Seasons changed as winter frost coated the metal. Spring rains washed through the empty bones, and summer heat carried the smell of decay across the river. The pirate had survived the first noose, an event many believed impossible. Yet he could not escape the relentless machinery of 18th century justice, which ensured that even after death, his body continued serving the crown as a silent warning against the bloody ambitions of the Golden Age of Piracy.